Imagine yourself as a parent to a young, beautiful child that you watched grow from an infant to a toddler to a teenager and finally an adult. Now imagine your shock and horror when you come to learn that this child was found deceased, hanging off the side of a fence, left there for hours because they were mistaken for a Halloween decoration. Your child, a Halloween decoration. This was the harsh reality for the parents of Rebecca Cade when they came to learn that their child was found hanging off the side of a fence on October 13th, 2015. I'm Donvi.
And I'm Rania.
And this is the case of Rebecca Cade. Rebecca was known to be a kind, loving person to those who truly knew her.
Rebecca's adoptive mother, Cindy Cade, described her as a free spirit, loved by everyone who truly knew her, and someone who loved to dance and loved God. This quote shows how Rebecca was seen by those closest to her, and shows you that beyond the case itself, Rebecca was someone with a personality, relationships, and a life that mattered.
Within Chillicothe, Rebecca was known to be a transient person who was close to very few people and would often hop from home to home with others who were unhoused at the time. Rebecca was also known to live a complex lifestyle, struggling with drug abuse and prostitution. There was also allegations at the time that she did struggle with mental health issues that made her susceptible to outside opinion.
Before diving further into the details behind this case, it's important to first understand Rebecca's family and her support system. So this here is Rebecca Cade's family tree, including her adoptive family and her child. Rebecca Cade was previously married, but later divorced. She and her ex-husband had a child together named Brian Allen Cade Park, who was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, which suggests alcohol use during pregnancy. In 2014, custody of their child was granted to her ex-husband's sister, Denise Hughes, who has been raising him alongside her own child. We did try to reach out to Hughes, both over the phone and through Facebook, but we haven't received a response back. Even after losing custody, some articles suggested that Rebecca still made occasional efforts for her child, like bringing in diapers and food.
When approaching our investigation, we wanted to establish a clear view of what happened during this case. To achieve this, we talked to the Chillicothe Police Department, specifically the chief. And Ron Myers was able to give us a clear view as to what happened by giving us the police report. From this report, we learned that Rebecca was 88 pounds, had brown hair, brown eyes, and was around 31 years old when she was found. We also learned that she was found at an AEP construction site hanging off of an industrial fence. After further forensic analysis, it was deducted that she died due to blunt force trauma to her head induced by a rock that was found a few feet away from her body. As we were reading this report, we also learned that she was found with multiple cigar burns and bruises to her body, and DNA of 3 men were found in her vaginal area, suggesting she may have been sexually assaulted.
With that context in mind, we can now look at the events surrounding the case, starting with the gathering that took place at 90 North Rose Street. This is a party that Rebecca Cade was not physically present at, but it later becomes important. Several individuals made notable decisions and statements that night, such as Donnie Kochenauer Jr., who claimed that Cade had robbed him, or Paul Lowry, that suggested that she might have had something to do with his brother's death. Tensions later escalated into Caleb Campbell and Donnie Kochenauer Jr. ending up in a fight.
Building off of what happened at the gathering, we can now look at how location plays a key role within this case. Over here, we have an AI-generated image of the crime scene that we got using Gemini AI. Over here, we have Rebecca hanging off of the fence, but at the actual crime scene, this fence did not exist, and instead was hanging off the fence with the 3 signs. Underneath, you can see the rock, which we used to signify the rock that was used to kill her, and that's her blood on it.
And to your right is a map showing the place where the gathering took place and the location where Cade's body was later found. Both of these locations are only about 0.3 miles apart from each other, which is roughly a 7-minute walk. That just puts into perspective just how close both locations really are. Now, the night of the events. All of the information comes from the police report and other additional research that we did. On the night of October 12th, 2015, between 8:30 to 9:30 p.m., the party at 90 North Rose Street was underway, where multiple fights broke out between Donnie Kochenauer Jr. and Caleb Campbell. Around 9:15 to 9:30 p.m., Donnie Kochenauer Jr. was asked to leave the premise of the party. And according to Linda Summers, he was walking down Water Street with 4 to 5 unidentified individuals. By around 10:30 p.m., the party began to wind down and people began to leave. About an hour later, at approximately 11:30 p.m., a witness reported seeing Cade across the home on East 2nd Street. Around midnight, a witness reported seeing Cade get into a black Cadillac with 3 others, one of whom was identified to be Rodney Montgomery. The next morning, at 7:30 a.m., an individual named Michael Woodbridge was walking his dog when he stumbled upon a driver's license. He decided to pick it up. Approximately 30 minutes after, on his way back, he stumbled upon a lighter, a cell phone, a pair of shoes, even a dumped purse, with no one around. At 8:16 a.m., a dispatcher initially logged the situation as a lost and found case. However, as officers began investigating the premise and some of the items, they noticed a trail of blood. The situation had escalated. Roughly an hour and a half later, Rebecca Cade's body was discovered, and the case was reclassified as a homicide investigation.
What sets our case apart, though, was that someone was arrested for the murder of Rebecca Cade, this person being Donnie Kochenauer, who was arrested on October 14th on 1 count of murder. He was arrested due to substantial evidence pointing to him. Some of this evidence included his DNA being found on Rebecca and him being the last person to have any relations with her. It was also identified how at the local police department at 2 a.m. on October 13th got a call from the sister of Donnie saying how her brother forced himself into her home demanding a shower because he was covered in bloodied clothes. Before Donnie even went to trial, there was controversy on whether he was even competent enough to stand trial due to his speech impediment and his anger issues. However, his psychologist claimed that he was capable of standing trial. However, the psychologist's main point to prove that he was competent was because Donnie could do his own laundry. What was most surprising about this case, though, was the final jury decision. Halfway through the jury deliberation, it was 11-1 guilty. However, by the end, this dramatically switched from 12-0 not guilty, making Donnie a free man. Over here, we have a document of the people on this jury that we were able to obtain. And we did try to contact the people on here, but unfortunately, they haven't gotten back to us. And as we were talking to Donnie's attorney, he told us that this was the first and only time he's ever seen anything like this occur over his 20-plus years of practice. Although Donnie was arrested and was later released, we do have another person of interest we would like to talk to about the case. We would like to preface, though, that we are not accusing anyone of the murder of Rebecca Cade, but rather this is an objective conclusion we came to after analyzing the evidence we were given. This person is person R. We believe person R would be an important person to talk to regarding the case because he was at this party and had a history of violence. Furthermore, the neighbor of the host saw Rebecca get into a black Cadillac with 3 unknown men. And as this neighbor was describing the physical appearance of one of these men, it matched the exact identity of person R. We believe by talking to person R, we can learn as to why Rebecca went into this car and where this car was going. Though it is unsure as to what happened to Rebecca prior to her death, we came up with a possible theory as what we believed happened. Since Rebecca did struggle with drug abuse and often had trouble making ends meet, we believe that this caused her to be in debt to her dealer, and we believe that her death was a way for the dealer to collect. Since at the time it was said that a lot of people within her group shared the same dealer, we believe that the dealer was able to grab a few people from this group, people that Rebecca knew. And they lured her into this car, and she was willing to get in because they were people she knew. This car then went to that AEP construction site and at this construction site, they viciously attacked and assaulted her. As a last-ditch effort to save herself, she ran away and got caught on the and tried to climb over the fence, but as she went down, she got caught. And in the heat of the moment, one of the attackers got the rock, hit her on the head, and she eventually died. Shocked that they killed her, we believe that the attackers took her things and ran and tried to flee so they wouldn't get caught, and dumped her things 2 streets over and fled.
Before we conclude this presentation, we want to acknowledge the individuals who helped us gather information on this case. Much of our research came from a legal and more official perspective, since many of Rebecca Cade's family members are either deceased or failed to respond to our outreach. Jim Bolger, Kochenauer's attorney, shared insights on the trial, his experience with Kochenauer as a client, and how the jury's perspective shifted, while also helping to clarify a lot of our legal concepts. Ron Meyer, the Chillicothe police chief, provided a detailed police report that answered many of our questions and connected us with first responders. Bud Lytle, one of the first responders, described the scene upon arrival and offered additional context through follow-up questions. Sherry Rutherford, the Chillicothe law director, guided us on how to approach agencies and obtain necessary documents. Finally, Mr. Berry, who believed in us and supported us throughout this entire process. Overall, their contributions were essential in helping us better understand and present this case.
Here is a timeline of how we investigated this case. From August to September, we were looking at cases and found one that really spoke to us, which is why we chose the case of Rebecca Cade. From October to November, we started gathering as much information as possible by contacting people who were directly involved within the case and requesting any possible legal documents. In December, we created the first draft of our presentation and presented it to our classmates. From January to February, we continued to revise this presentation, try and gather any new evidence, and review the evidence we already had. In March, we finalized our presentation and practiced speaking it so it would sound clear and cohesive. Rebecca's case still remains unsolved, and she deserves justice. If you have any information regarding the case of Rebecca Cade, please call the Chillicothe Police Department at 740-773-1191.
Thank you for listening. At this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I actually have 2. So, regarding the timeline for Woodbridge and finding the belongings, did he find them on the same, path with the map, with, where she was found in the party? Were her belongings, within that path?
Her belongings were found 2 streets over in the opposite direction from where she was found. So we had the house over here, and then the construction site and where she was found here, and then 2 streets over this way is where her belongings were found.
Okay, and then I also had another question. It was in 2000, right, when this happened?
2015.
Yeah.
2015. Was there any security cam footage on this job site or anywhere?
Nothing that we could get a hold of, and nothing that they had open to the public. Yeah.
You said that there was 3 different DNAs found on her. Were they confirmed to be any people? Did they know who to track the DNA to?
One of them they did match to Donnie. The other 2 they did not find a match for.
On what grounds was Donnie released? So much evidence was pointing towards him. Why did the jury switch?
Well, that's still unknown to us just because of that final jury decision. But personally, I think that a lot of the evidence did point to Donnie, but we can't really know anything until we actually talk to those people on that jury. Yeah.
How long was that jury deliberation?
It was for 3 hours, I believe.
Did the attorney shed any light on why it switched from 11 to 1 to 12 to 0?
He was honestly super surprised because he hadn't seen that in his 20 plus years of being an attorney himself. And usually you're able to talk to them afterwards, but he didn't even give up on the chance. So he didn't even give in to find out what happened because he already won the case. So it didn't really pertain to him.
So you guys talk about person R. I was wondering, does person R have his DNA in the database to be matched?
He did not, because they did not match any of the DNA they found to him.
I'm gonna guess that the DNA is still actively in the database. So
Yeah.
if they're bringing matches, they would come.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.